Hello, hello, everybody. This is Ghost Kumo, who's going to be doing your English restream commentary for East Origin. So our racers here that we have today, we have on the left is going to be na2na. Spells his name na2na, the number two. And the on the right will be Harumaki-san. So for a little bit of context into these runners, Harumaki has been the world record holder of most of the categories of this game for over 5 years now. We consider him kind of a goat and also like a robot because his consistency in this game is absolutely, absolutely incredible. And Nazuna-san has actually been he's a relative newcomer to this game. We haven't had a lot of new people running this game, but he's come in and really, held his own. He's taken second place in this category. Also, shoutouts on commentary to on the Japanese restream to Kishko-san, who he doesn't really. I don't think he's run this game, but he's also kind of an East Series veteran, and all of these guys have been generally pretty cool within the community. So I'm really excited to see this race. I'm excited to see them get to show off their hard work. So the category we're going to be doing today is any percent Toal English. You'll notice that it says English version on there, which is a bit of an oddity given that this is RTA in Japan, and this game actually does have a Japanese release. In fact, it's a Japanese game. However, the English version is preferential for the PC version of this game because it is substantially more stable than the Japanese release, which is prone to crashing. We do categorize the two separately, partly for that reason. The Japanese version is a little bit faster on text, but the stability levels the playing field. I also imagine it's because we had four of our top runners, including myself, do a race of this for Questing for Glory a couple months back, and that's probably just the version that they they ended up sticking with when they submitted this game. So I'm gonna be getting started here very soon. This game starts off with about a 2.5 minute long cutscene. Um, so for just kind of some basic overview of the story, characters of this game, the main character that we're gonna be playing as for this run is Toal. He is a secret character you get for beating the game with at least one other character. For many players, it's typically Unica, who was the I think it was 4 years ago at the first, RTA in Japan event, that East Origin was last in, and Harumaki-san ran, the PS4 version of her route. The Toll, on the other hand, is kinda playing for the antagonist side of the story, compared to, like, the heroes of, Unica and Hugo. This whole cutscene here is sort of a prelude to everything that's gone on. Um You fight against Toll in, Hugo's story because, again, he's siding with the antagonists here, but his route is sort of the canon, true ending of the game. We see the goddesses here, these are Rhea and Fina. They are pivotal characters in the first 3 canonical Ys games, and they notice that his sword is broken and missing, and right in front of this area that's they don't have a name for it yet. It, becomes to be known as Darm Tower. There's an FMV that's supposed to play here, but it's disabled because FMVs are slow. And even if you don't disable them, it's still slower to skip it than to just disable them. and just shows the bad guys here using the power of the top of this tower here to just shoot a laser beam at the floating continent of Ys, which is about the only time when the land of Ys is relevant to the Ys franchise. This is funny enough. The name is a bit of an artifact at this point. But yeah, it's going on strong. We just had East 9 released stateside this year, so this game kind of is set up as a precursor to everything.
あ、英語版ということなんですけれども、PC 版がですね、ちょっと、日本語を
So this
対応しておりませんで、
game does advance text at a very fast rate if you're holding the jump button,
正確に言うと、
but
日本語版はですね、
instead,
言語差的にも日本語の
it's faster to hold the jump button and then mash the confirm
方言が、
button, which saves probably like
クエスティングフォー
I would
クエスト
estimate about
イベントを出す
2/3 of a
際に、
second for every
それ
minute
を
worth of
使っ
cutscene,
てアジャストの
roughly
マニュアル
speaking.
効果みたいな
And so they just both went for a little skip that you can do here in the tutorial fight.
ツールがありまして、
If you
そ
lunge
の
at
プレイ
the
をする
correct
と、
angle down there, you
スライディン
can
グの
actually flip
際
out
に
of
ですね、
bounds. And if you're out of bounds
スライディング
there,
できるよう
Toll's
になってい
position is
ます。
going to be
そうすることによって、今ですね、
further
トールがこの位
upwards
置に
on this
カク
screen
コして
here.
いる
It
んですけれど
saves
も、
like
本当はこのザバの、に対峙する
a
形で
third of a
カク
second
コ
or
するこ
something
とが
like
できるんで
that
すけ
to
ども、
do this.
位置をずらすことによって約
But it's
0
free to
0
go
0
for, and it looks
0
really funny
まで
because
差が出ると。
it changes the cutscene very, very oddly. Anyway, so Toll's kind
会
of
話は
he's kind of just in it
そ
for
の
his
クエ
own
ストと
gain. He
現
wants
場
to
の
seek more and
接
more
続に
power.
する。
He was originally on the side of good,
ちょっ
but
と細か
then
く説明しま
defected
すけれど
after his
も、
mentor
まあ、この
died,
RTA がいかに
and
過酷であ
he
るかがわか
gained
る通り、
he wanted to gain more power. The bad guys don't trust him whatsoever.
そ
So
の
our
点
goal in
は、
this
大
tower
切だ
here
と
is
いう
to
こと
just
で、これ
clean
はピ
up
ラミッドなんですけれども、
and deal
アジャ
with
スト
all
に
the
行く
demons
か、
here and use them to power up, which is actually a remarkably organic way to handle an
移動に関しては
RPG.
このようにですね、移動
Um,
して、Z キーのボ
where
タンを
every
握っ
time you kill
て、
something, it just
ガチャッ
it
とアイテ
literally
ムを
makes
置いて
you
いく。
stronger.
これが、移動に適していますので、このよう
Anyways,
に使いま
so
す。
basic combat of this game, you have an attack button,
赤く光ってい
you
るのが
have a
パ
jump
ワー
attack
なんです
button,
けれ
which
ども、これを使
aerial
うと
attacks do
私
more
のですね、
damage. You'll see that in
赤く
effect
光る
pretty
素晴らしさ
soon.
がですね、
You have a
こ
basic
ちら
ground
の、
combo. You have a downward thrust, which stuns enemies. It's not super useful, but it can't. There are a couple
これ
points in the run where it is
がヒーロー
useful.
のギミック
And
で
then
す。
finally, you have a lunge. Now, the lunge is useful because it lowers
今の
enemy
は新規
defense.
の方で
It's slightly
すね。
faster for movement early on, but what we're going to do
いい感じの
is we're going to get this
はい。
Cerulean Phobellum is the
はい。
name of this item, and it
こ
gives
の
us wind
この
magic,
翼
which
と、
grants this
翼
dash.
を
And if
使
you
って
chain
飛ばす
together
ことによっ
lunges
て、
into a
スピードが
dash,
使えるようになるんです
you
ね。
can perform what is a god
これ
called
を
like a
使うことによっ
Godspeed
て、
lunge or a God lunge for
ここに
short, and
使われ
that's
ている大
pretty
体
much
の
the
ゲー
term
ム
that I'm
で
going to
す
be
ね。
using to refer to it. By performing a God lunge,
世界
you
では
kind of chain together the
冒険
lunge
ゲームでも、
momentum and the
戦う
God
ことによって、
speed movement
移動距離
bonus
であったり、
without some of the
ス
speed
ピードを上げ
penalties
てい
that
る
come
ゲ
with
ーム
both
で
of
す。
them. It's
で、
kind of the
先
vital
ほども
piece
言っ
of
た
tech, and
装
it's
備を
also
使う
why we
ことによっ
run this
て、
game on mouse and keyboard. You're going to see their mouse cursor moving around the screen. You can do God lunges without it, but it's
で、
substantially harder. And I think the only person who's ever really
立ってから、スライディングするこ
mastered
と
the
ができるよう
technique
に
is
なっています。
Harumaki. We're going to see a little bit of a route divergence between these two.
別にそ
Harumaki is about the
の、
only one
い
who
う
can
わけで
really
はないんで
do
すけ
this
れども、
particular route
上の
here.
方にですね、マウスカーソルを当てて、
But I'll get into the
クリックする
differences
と速度
in
が上
just
が
a
っ
bit.
たり、ジャンプの高さがちょっと変わったり、高くなったりというような、
So na2na is
用
taking a
の
bit
操
of a
作
more
がで
safe
きます。
route to make
こ
this
の操作
work.
の時にですね、鉄の格子の隙間を横から抜けていきまして、
You can
このよう
dash
に飛ば
across
すこと
that
ができます。
platform that you see on na2na's side
ちょっと操作でき
by
ないの
actually
ですが、
releasing the mouse
小型の
cursor.
ゲ
Your
ームは
Godspeed actually
こういうこと
travels
ができ
farther
て、
and faster if you're not
重
locked
装
onto
備を
something.
出
The
し
caveat to
て、
this
鉄
is
の
it
方に
likes
大
to
多数
lock
回
on
復
to
す
any
るという
nearby
ことですごく伸
enemies.
ばしました。
And he also performed a clip
技を出
there.
すギミックをすでに結
There's
ん
going to
でお
be
り
a
ます。
lot of clips in this run. This is a very, very busted speed game for how linear and railroaded this game
で、
actually is.
先ほど手に入れたロダの実です。を、
Many different
戦
skips can
術
be
戦術
performed
スキル
by
トールに渡すことによっ
maneuvering
て、
Toal
先ほ
to
ど
an
も
up
説明し
right
まし
or
た
an
通
up
り、
left angle at like 45 degrees. The reason for this is there's a frame or two of your
話すことが
Godspeed animation
話すこと
where
が
Toal just
次
straight
々
up
やってくる
phases out of existence.
このイベントが終わったらルート分岐する感じですね。そうですね。
And so you actually don't have collision detection during that
皆さ
frame,
んは、
and so it's remarkably easy at the correct angle and
鉄の
speed to
板
just
模型
skip
というもの
past
をは
it.
め込んで床を
So Nelson is not gonna be doing what you see on Harumaki's side. Harumaki is gonna be performing this trick where, there's a brief, like, couple of frames when you enter this, loading zone down here where you can perform a jump and then get a, Godspeed dash in midair, and he wants to get just enough momentum to clear this, loading zone or not this loading zone, this boss trigger here, because if you get past this, boss trigger, which I finally got it on the 3rd try, you gain access to this item here called the Claria Ring, which gains +3 strength and -3 defense. For anyone who's played a game in the East, Arkham Nepistrum engine, which includes this game, Arkham Nepistrum, and East Oath and Felghana, 1 point of strength is huge. It's gonna change his level routing and allow him to do more damage consistently throughout the rest of the run, up until about endgame where he gets a better piece of equipment. The problem is this trick is really hard to go for, and Harumaki's about the only one crazy enough to do it. Uh, this is sort of like the first major route change this game has seen in probably 4 years when he started integrating this into runs. na2na didn't do this. He went straight for the bat room here, which we clipped into, and you can get into this at any point. Normally, you want to fight the boss that Harumaki skipped to get into this room, but that would get you the key into this door. But doors are just a suggestion, so we're going to be just skipping everything. So it might appear that na2na is ahead, but it's only very slight. This skip right here is very tricky. We call this the Dyson room skip because this room sucks, and I mean that in most literal of senses. Very good on na2na. That getting that trick on the first cycle of, your boost is very good. So we unlock the boost power up, it turns Toal purple, and it changes his damage output and halves all damage that he takes. Harumaki-san also got it on the um, first couple of attempts. It's very good because this game actually has an EXP multiplier. The way the EXP multiplier works is that for every, attack that you do, your EXP, yield from killing an enemy goes up by 1%, up to a maximum of a 99% bonus, which effectively means that you get double EXP so long as you stay in combat. And he was able to keep his meter up by performing that trick very quickly. Nazuna getting the clip on this door here very on the first try, and Hanamaki doing so as well. So these 2 have both been performing very well so far in this run. Yeah, so the Dyson room, skip, the Dyson room, I believe it was either Ravi or Nazuna who first gave it that name, and I thought it was the funniest thing, so I insist on calling it that. So as alluded to on the idea of this game, destroying keyboards, that is actually kind of true. By just the sheer amount of mashing on your left click and attack buttons to advance the text, you can save frames, but absolutely murder your keyboard. Nozen actually has a input display, and his average run of this game will have somewhere between like 10 and 20,000 Z presses on his keyboard. He has the camera that's focused on his keyboard. You can see on the layout there. I haven't been talking about this boss. He's not particularly threatening. This is Vela Gunder. Um, the way this guy works is you have to hit his face enough times before you can hit his, I guess, brain at the top, which is his weak spot. You really don't want to, you really want to avoid when he does this camera shifting suction attack. Um, you don't want him to finish that. You want to do enough damage to reveal his weak spot beforehand. Because if he spits out these bugs every time you do damage to him, and if he sucks some of them back up, he regenerates health, and this turns a 4 cycle fight into a 5 cycle fight. But yeah, both of them have done very well here. Harumaki has gotten what appears to be a small lead. It's actually a bit more of a substantial lead because he lost some time to get the Glaria ring.
あんた兄弟いるみたいな話をしてますね。
So this is Epina. She's basically a side character who's more important in the other two characters' stories. And she just tells us that some idiot who looks a lot like Toal is in the tower, and Toal just thinks that can only be one person. So we're gonna see a little bit of him in the next screen, and it's one of the worst fights in this run. Uh, a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of this, but I actually quite personally like this part of the run. In between every chapter, which is every section of the tower, we get these flashback cutscenes of Toll's past. They do a lot to build up his character, but importantly, they're a nice break from having to really play the game. na2na is just absolutely murdering his keyboard for optimal speed. We have briefly talked a little bit about allowing for turbo in this game, and most people seem to be positive about it. So that might be something that we integrate into the leaderboards fairly soon. It just hasn't quite happened yet, so
まあね、このキーボードの打鍵音
the
でね、
Red Bulls are kicking in.
いかに大変な RTA かを感じていただければと思います。
はい。何せ2万回ですからね。
そうですね。ね、連打がやめられないというね。
ちなみにこちらリアルフォースのあれです。静音モデルですよ。静音でこれ
そうなんですか。
静音モデルでさえ、このね。はい、というわけで、春巻さん早速、水獄の領域入っていきます。
I can't tell if that's a plush next to the Red Bulls or like it looks like a oversized potato. So Harumaki just clipping past that pink barrier there. Very easy skip. Most of the skips in this game are actually remarkably easy to perform. The few exceptions being the Dyson room skip because there's suction in the center that just makes things inconsistent. You're going to see them fighting enemies a lot along the way here. The reason for that is the enemies in this area give very solid EXP, and we want to get ourselves to, I think it's level 9. I'm not entirely sure what the number of the level is, because when notating what level we need to be, we actually use health, because there are no random level ups in this game. All of your stats are fixed, so that you get the same stats every time. So you'll notice their HP meter. Haramaki's is 106 and na2na is 100. That's what usually we use to indicate our level. And so Harumaki and na2na both want to be 117 before they get to the next fight.
この RTA では、特に赤色と黄色の飛躍を維持して進むことが、ダメージ効率、そしてタイムの短縮に非常に重要な要素となっております。
赤い飛躍によって飛躍的にタイムが伸びるんですよね。
ナイス。お、
あって。
This is probably the most random portion of the run, because what we want to see is a +5 strength bonus and a +3 MP regen bonus. So every enemy you kill has a chance of dropping these little potions that give a little bit of a bonus to your strength, defense, and MP regen stats. Up to a maximum of +5 points of strength and +3 times speed of regen MP, because of the combo you can do on the Hugo fight here, which basically hundreds to zero him without even having to move after the initial part. So Harumaki's going to initiate this fight by doing a downward lunge to try and reduce his defense, and then just wail on him. This particular strat here is quite peculiar. He's actually let go of the mouse cursor entirely, so that he can just chain together attack combos really quickly before Hugo starts firing his laser and just doing a ton of damage. So Harumaki successfully getting the quick kill there. That was very nice. This fight is really annoying. It was sort of the gatekeeper for the longest time with this run before the quick kill strat was found. Each of them picked up an item called the they're called the black chain or the black vest. It gives a little bit of defense and makes this fight significantly more tolerable in the event that you mess things up. Looks like na2na is struggling a little bit on the quick kill here. He also didn't get the MP regen bonus that Harumaki did, so one of the few portions of the run that's dictated by randomness. Fortunately, one of the nice little backup strats to this fight is Hugo hits you with heavy, and you can actually do jump attacks without going up very high in elevation, and just wailing on Hugo with jump attacks whenever you're hit with heavy, which just kind of makes things ridiculous. So his basic combo gets canceled if you attack a bunch and then use your Godspeed magic, so he effectively canceled the combo there. And just kind of kept things going. This is why you want the MP regen, because this strat drains a lot of MP. There is another trick called combo canceling, which is where you mash the left click and attack button, and you repeat a particular hit of your combo. That is what we call combo canceling. So that particular fight would almost be skippable, excuse me, voice crack there. But unfortunately, there's a need to be able to breathe underwater. Harumaki making a slip up there, so he had to do a backup. You can actually clear that jump by letting go of the mouse cursor and doing 2 Godspeeds in midair to just clear that gap. There's a whole bunch of little optimizations like that in this run. But yeah, we need the ability to breathe underwater, so Harumaki just equipped the Water Dragon Scales, which slows down the air meter above your head significantly whenever you're underwater. Yeah, every East Origin runner has forgot to equip the Water Dragon Scales and died at least once. It's like a rite of passage. So we're hoping neither of these two make that mistake, because it's kind of a hell of a walk of shame. So we'll see on Harumaki's screen kind of just the benefits of what we call moveless. It's where you're just not moving in a particular direction and your momentum is carried entirely by Godspeeds or attacks. And another strat I haven't really talked about is what we refer to as wall running. If you're moving with any form of momentum, movement, lunging, Godspeed, etc., and your character's model is brushing up on the right side of a wall, all forms of movement are accelerated, which means, forward movement, jumping, you actually will jump to a higher height than you would originally be able to. And your falling speed is actually increased. So they're using the falling speed increase to fall faster in the water. So there is a way to turn this from being a glorified auto-scroller into a relatively decent portion of movement. But most of the time you'll see the runners, if they can, they'll try to do as much wall running and just keeping their, basically their face brushed up against the wall as much as possible for movement. So they picked up the 11 strike hammer, which gives you the power of Thunderclaw. That's needed to kill the enemies to get past this barrier. Now you can skip this barrier. We've never been able to find a precise enough, or a consistent enough skip to be able to do that. Even with God lunging. So it's about the last pink barrier left in the run that we killed the pink enemies for. So Harumaki killing a few enemies so that he can get his stats up to, I believe he wants to be about halfway up a level at 129. And in that water portion, he picked up a Rotafruit, which, apart from the first one, all of them are supposed to be optional.
まあ、要は攻撃の初段を繰り返す。初段から2段までをこう繰り返すっていう感じですね。
And the Rotafruits are traded to the Ruse for useful items. In this case, he picked up a
素晴らしい。
早いっすね。
he picked up a topaz. The gems in this game enhance your magic. We picked up an emerald earlier, which makes it so that you can charge Godspeed, and that just gives you a longer dash, which is useful for some parts of the run. The topaz gives you the empowered Thunderclaw, which normally Thunderclaw is just kind of a forward thrust attack that has like earth properties to it. Don't ask why thunder is earth in this game. But the charged Thunderclaw is an area of effect attack, which is extremely useful for damaging enemies here. Especially when you're in boost, the area of effect is very big. It also heals you a little bit. But you're going to see Harumaki employing a strat here where he uses the charged Thunderclaw and he gets the boss to kind of coil on himself. And then breaks the spikes on his back. And that was a very, very clean fight. na2na getting in on the fight himself. Yeah, you gotta break the 13, I believe, spikes on this boss's back before you can hit the head and finish it off. So, Harumaki getting the quick kill. Once you break, I think, 8 spikes, he turns himself into a wheel and then starts rolling around the arena. And it is very obnoxious, and you're kind of left at the mercy of, I don't want to say RNG, but it feels like RNG. Whether or not you're able to hit any of the spikes or you're able to hit his head, because his patterns become much more unpredictable. So the usual strategy, break a few of the ones on the front, and then you start using Thunderclaw to kill the ones on the back. And unfortunately, it looks like na2na is gonna... No? Aww. He was able to get all the spikes, but he wasn't able to get the hits on the head. You can get a couple hits on the head if he... You can get a couple hits on the head because of the way he rotates in the middle of his rotation, but it's not super consistent. So, na2na unfortunately losing a lot of time there. Back to Harumaki's screen. Right now, he wants to get himself to 152 for the next boss. Mostly because it's just you do better damage at that level. And so, this particular boss has a really peculiar strategy. You'll see Harumaki stopped there very briefly before Godspeeding into the arena. If you Godspeed from that position into the arena here, what happens is you maintain those frames of no collision in your Godspeed animation for this fight. And that essentially means that Toal does not have any collision in this fight. Interacting, I believe, with any 3D objects, or 3D, like, bosses, prevents this, so the strat's not useful for most bosses. But fights against sprite characters, like the humans and the like, this can work on in a few choice places. And so we're going to fight this priest here. His name is Shion, and he's kind of a very annoying fight. He's part of the good guys, and he's trying to stop us from getting to the goddesses, which is part of the story of this game. I'll touch on that in a little bit. There's a long cutscene gauntlet after this. But yeah, we have no collision detection in this fight. So long as we don't use Godspeed again. So fight basically becomes wait for him to attack so you can break his shield and just absolutely wail on him. And you'll see
4戦ですね。
the use of what we refer to as combo canceling,
ただちょっと
repeating the same hit of the combo to deal ridiculously high damage per second.
雷を落としてくる動きがやってほしい動きなんですけれども、おっと、なずなさん足を滑らせてしまった。
Yeah, this boss fight used to be one of the worst in the entire run,
時々このシオンがですね、
and now it's just free. It's just straight up free. Na2na unfortunately falling off the platforming section there.
雷2回打ってめちゃくちゃ速かったですね。
そうですね。過去一のあれですね。
はい。
はい。
So we don't actually need to hit
時間ぐらいかかりますけど
the heal slash save statue, and we'll still be able to access that warp point after this fight, thankfully.
次第で本当に
The game kind of automatically gives it to you after this cutscene. So essentially the story here is
ですかね。
the goddesses were found in the in the tower here, and they have in their possession the dark, powerful MacGuffin that is known as a Black Pearl. It has a lot of dark magic in it, and one of the goddesses has access to this, and
宿の塔ですね。に移動
need to make absolutely sure it does not fall into the wrong hands. But they also are trying to stop or stop Dallas, the big bad of the game, from basically just unleashing more more hell on the land of
ヒ
Ys.
ナ様をラドの塔に、まあ、監禁して、まあ、次の、まあ、レアですね。もう一人の女神を探しに行く。
So we captured one of the goddesses and put her basically in a cage because they need her for whatever reason.
雷の動きをしてほしい。
But she does not have the Black Pearl, so by process of elimination, it's probably in Rio's possession because we have Fina here.
お願いします。
機嫌はどうでしょうか。
あんまり良くないですね。
あんまり良くはないですね。あ
あー
これですね。
様子見
これですね。これこれこれこれ。
いや、ちょっとひどいですね、これ。
これひどいやつですね。
これひどいですね。
向きがおかしい。
赤飛躍も切れている状態なので、ちょっとダメージソースとして厳しいところもあります。いや
いや
い
けまし
ー、厳しいです。撃破は可能です。
さて、春巻さんの方は、フィーナから銀のハーモニカを入手します。まあ、元はこれ、トールが、レアに渡したものなんですが、
Sorry, I got a phone call. I'm gonna take this.
銀のハーモニカも落としてしまったんです。あと、隣に、宝箱あったと思うんですけど、あれが次のエリアで必要になるんですが、まあ、ドアをね、失礼してしまうので、この宝箱は一生開けられないままですね。
はい。トール君、本当に何も開けないんで。顔パスなんでね。はい。というわけで、ラドの塔から、トガビの領域、先ほどのボスのエリアですね、の奥に次に必要なものがありますので、取りに行きます。
はい、ここに、祀られているのが、グレンの体験という、トバ団長の剣ですね。なんか、幽霊が出てきますが、こちらがトバ団長です。他の、3人いるうちのもう一人のですね、ユニカさんの、お父さんですね。
My sincerest apologies. A friend of mine had to call me about something that sounded fairly urgent, so I wanted to make sure I was in on that. I'll still be here. Um, apologies for the absence there. But anyways, this whole portion's just been a lot of cutscenes anyway, so you're not really missing much in terms of tech. Long story short, so after defeating Shion, we've captured the goddess and put her sort of in this stasis, like to prevent her from really being able to do much. But she does have a little bit of magical power to give Toal the harmonica, which was a gift that he actually made for Ria years back. The two of them have sort of this kind of like relationship going on. And Harumaki just played up to where he found the Crimson Lotus Blade is the name of the weapon, and it gives access to his fire magic, which lets him create this sort of like tornado power. It's useful for movement just because it's like a little bit of a hover, but it's also useful because it's fire damage and it has a few guard frames during its attack animations, so it can actually be really useful in combat as well, both for dealing damage and for defensive reasons. The first ruby, which is the gem that powers it up, is very close to when you get it. There's also a cutscene where he meets with his deceased mentor, who is Unica's father. Saul Tova is his name, and in the conversation with him, I actually see Harumaki is on that particular cutscene right now, and just kind of gives him like a heart to heart, as his like his spirit does anyway. Gives him a bit of a heart to heart about you know everything that's happened and kind of that Toll still has some good in him. So the rest of his story is sort of his heel, like his face turn over the course of this game from kind of anti-villain to just proper hero. I also really like this cutscene that's on Harumaki's screen because we meet a character we've never met and give her a sword that in the EX category, like which is total extra, we actually skip the Shion fight and all the cutscenes that follow. So we give her a sword that we never picked up. Anyways, so there's another skip here where you can use God Lunging to get past this pink barrier. It's kind of finicky. If you get the angle wrong, you can fall through the floor. Harumaki was able to get through it pretty easily. It's taking a couple tries there. The enemies in that screen are really annoying and can really put a damper on trying to do the skip there.
なずなさんの方はおそらく安らぎの腕輪っていうねアイテムを取ると思うんですが、こちら MP 消費指輪すみません指輪です失礼しました MP 消費が軽減されるアイテムですね。
So this next boss is kind of annoying. Monkey's gonna actually grind up a couple levels because, as mentioned earlier, a single point of strength is actually a ton in this game. And there happens to be this screen of enemies here, which is really good for getting the XP really quickly. Harumaki's gonna go with the 169 strat here, which is really rough to go for under the old route, because you just don't really have a lot of strength, but because he has the Cleria ore, he's able to make it work. Which means that he doesn't have to spend as long killing enemies, so that Cleria ore, although it does take time to get, it is paying dividends over the course of the run. But na2na doesn't have the Cleria ring, so he's going to go for a bit of an older strat here, I believe, where he's going to be getting what's called the Ring of Ease, which replenishes your magic at a quicker rate. It's not as fast, but it does save a little bit of time over not getting it. This boss fight's a bit infamous for kind of being really annoying. If you run away from his hands as he punches you and jump, the jump actually resets your momentum briefly and you'll get hit. So the key to this fight is to not jump more than necessary.
でこの頭突きでドーンと来る際に、豪華の無敵時間を使って、衝撃を吸収していますね。
Relatively cycle-based fight. You want to be able to do just enough damage so that he doesn't pull his head or fists back
マジか。
at any point in the fight. Because if you don't take care of them quickly, he starts doing this really long attack where he kind of just swipes his hand at the arena.
抜け方が実は
He also has if you take a really long time, he also has this tendency to do an attack where he shoots lightning at the arena. Neither of those attacks are ideal, and both of them are very dangerous, especially with how low level we are. I just noticed Harumaki actually didn't even equip the tier 2 armor, so I'm not even sure if he's realized it yet. na2na doing the fire tornado skip there, which saves a little bit of time. I think Harumaki does a slightly slower strat there. But that particular strat is really tricky. You can lose a little bit of time on it, and the slightly slower strat is what we use in Toal EX because we don't have fire magic for that route. So he probably just has that so ingrained in his muscle memory. So na2na's going to grind up to 175 here, I believe. Also opting for the fire tornado grind strats, which I've not actually seen anyone go for. It's about the same as Thunderclaw. It's just, probably finds that a little bit more consistent. It's also saving a little bit of time on getting EXP. Now, the nice thing about this game is the EXP system actually scales in your favor. Usually. Essentially, if you are a lower level when you defeat something, you gain more EXP, and if you're a higher level, you'll gain less of it. Which means that some of the bosses that we do, especially because this is on the easy difficulty and you don't need to be as high of a level to defeat them, they give a lot of EXP, and it allows you to skip grinding portions of the run otherwise. I haven't actually touched on the difficulty, so this game did not originally start with a very easy difficulty. So easy was kind of just the default lowest difficulty speedrun. And so that was kind of the standard. They did eventually add a very easy difficulty, but the only game that I think we've ever really taken the very easy difficulty category seriously on is Oath and Felghana. And I think that's because there's some actual movement tech exclusive to that category based on the inclusion of the quick save feature, which kind of saves your position and it lets you skip a lot of things. So even in that game, there are points that you can die. Like, just because the game says that it is the easy difficulty, it is not an easy run to, like, to execute, and there are many points at which you can just die. Partly because one of the things we do one of the things that we do on the lower difficulties is we get less armor and less resources because those can be time consuming. So it kind of levels things out a little bit. Like if you have less armor, you're still going to take a lot of damage when you get hit.
はい、というわけでね、ボクサー入ってきましたね。
So this is a bit of a skip here. This is not a glitch, it's just you can use the fire tornado to get over to this door here without having to take the long way around. Going for a god lunge on this particular door. It's a bit of a tricky skip to get the right angle for. And then we kill these 4 enemies to spawn a chest, and the chest is going to grant the ability to double jump, so it's very useful. The strat for killing these enemies, you really want to group them all together and then use Charged Thunderclaw. Partly because Charged Thunderclaw heals you for 1 HP for every tick of damage you do. And partly because it's just very good area of effect damage for a portion of the game that we're significantly underleveled for. Especially because Harumaki is actually a level lower than na2na, given that he has the Clearia ore to offset some of the strength differences.
塔の外角を走るときもですね、壁加速のスライディング伸速が入るように調整したり、まあ、距離的にスライディング伸速のみでいい場所もあるということで使っていきます。あと MP の消費のバランスなんかも考えて、伸速入れるなり入れないなりっていうのも判断されているようです。春巻さん、集まりがいいですね。
おお、早い。
これはありがたい。
これイベント戦闘でして、まあ、不死身のね、敵なんですけれども、レアが出てきて、銀の鈴ですね。銀の鈴で倒してくれます。
So,
で、まあ、6進化に
what
は
Harumaki just did, he kills these 6 zombie enemies, and unfortunately we can't kill zombie enemies, so Rhea here, who has the Black Pearl, is going to give us the accessory to do just that. That particular fight's actually kind of interesting because you actually do a double jump downward thrust. It's the only part of the run that actually uses the downward thrust in combat. Like, it's as like a main strategy. Anyways, the cutscene here is just Toal talking to Rhea, and at this point, he's kind of already questioned, like, what he's doing, why he's, kind of betrayed everybody. And Rhea tells him about how, he still has some good left in him, even though Toal's convinced he's past the point of redemption. So we're gonna let her go, despite our primary objective at the start of the game being to find her and get that Black Pearl.
まあ、自分も、犠牲になってしまいますが、それがトールの狙いだったということがわかります。
なずなさんも大理石ドアスキップ。危うくちょっと妨害されるところでしたね。
So the item of the silver chimes is, I would describe it as conditionally useful. It's an accessory, and equipping accessories is usually slower because we want the accessory that lets us do more damage because this game is very hyper offensive. But there is one part that it can be useful for, depending on whether or not they are able to perform a skip later on. So na2na just finishing up with the 4 enemies there to do to get his double jump ability. Harumaki is doing a god lunge just to get past this gate. They finally found it. Oh, oh, my gosh, I'm actually a little bit behind. I was looking at the wrong stream there. So Harumaki just happened to have the worst luck there. So you can skip past that gate, and they got a consistent setup there to get past it, and saves a few seconds. But the reason I was laughing is Harumaki was trying to maneuver around in this room, and the thing about god lunging is if you shoot yourself to a it's an inward pointing corner, basically. You can actually clip through a lot of them because the geometry on certain boundaries in this game is not the most concrete. There's actually a skip that Harumaki is going to be performing fairly soon here that makes intentional use of this. But right there, he managed to clip to a lower area and have to perform the skip on the gate again because he happened to angle himself the absolute worst possible angle there.
どうも。
ここが竜骨の扉ですね。
So that was just an immensely unlucky time loss that I have never seen happen to anyone. So you might be able to, you might even be able to
を使わないと
cross off the free space on your Bangu card where we say that's never happened before. So Harumaki's doing the clip right now. You can god lunge through this particular corner and get out the other side. As a note, this kind of clip only works if there is something on the other side. So this is only useful in a very small number of areas.
ですね。
The reason why is
さあここ、非常に滑る展開に
if
なって
there's nothing on the other side, getting out of bounds just
攻撃なども入れながら抜けていきます。
getting out of bounds will just eject you and like reset your position to somewhere that you've
上に登っていくと。
somewhere that you just were before you clipped out of bounds. It's kind of a failsafe to prevent people from getting out of bounds in this game.
そしてボスドア
So
ということは皆さんわかりますか？
Harumaki performing there's a god lunge clip here, but he failed it, so he's doing the backup here on the door, which is a little bit more finicky.
あ、抜けましたね。
And this boss here absolutely sucks, so we're just not gonna do it.
なんかボスドアっぽいんですけどね。
So that was Konsklar. That fight sucks. And so we don't do it because, as mentioned earlier, whenever you're brushing up against something on the right side of your character model, it accelerates all momentum, which includes jump. So if you double jump and then use Godspeed, you can actually just jump over the trigger of that boss, which is not set to an infinite point. It's only set like just slightly higher than you should normally be able to jump to.
抜けられるか。ここの柵と先ほど、金のブレスレットを取った大理石の扉が非常にセキュリティレベルが高いドアと柵になっています。あ、抜けましたね。
Yeah, so the Consklard fight is just terrible. The boss has a lot of health. Takes a lot of combat stats to like even be able to fight him. So we would have had to grind for him. And yeah, it's slow, it's long, it's tedious, does a lot of damage to you even when you are the right level for it. It's just like it's one of the worst fights in the run. So the fact that you can skip it is just tremendous. Now all the fights in this game are references, for the most part, are references to fights in East 1 and 2. The Consklard fight is kind of infamous because in East 1, the strat to defeat him is you literally just run around him in circles. In this game, it's infamous because there's not really a particularly consistent strat, and it's just not a fun fight. So Harumaki here is in Blighted Blood, which is the second to last major area of the game. The enemies here give really, really good EXP, so he's going to be using them to grind as he's clearing the area. And that's sort of one of the things that I really like with this run, is the a lot of the combat, like, EXP that we're going to be getting is obtained throughout the run. There's only, like, one minor going out of your way section of grinding. Most grinding is done along the way. So doing a couple of high jumps there with the double jump and charged Inferno to get around the barriers and skip having to watch the like 10-second cutscene of this pressing the switch and lowering them. So this clip that he's about to perform here is the easiest in the game. It's just straight up you hold up and right and you get through that door. I actually, when I was learning this game, had no idea what the clip would be, but I took a guess based on other ones, and I got it first try. With like, just simply knowing I could clip there, I was able to clip it without knowing any strats. Like, that's how easy that door is to clip. So this room, we call it the pool party room, and by we I mean Spooty Biscuit gave it that name. He was a record holder of this category from like 2014 to 2016 for this particular category. We don't really do a lot of damage to these red enemies, and we need to kill them to get access to this Claria ore. But thankfully, this room has poisonous water in it, so if you can just trap the enemies in the poison, they basically just kind of wither away and die. This door that Harumaki's about to skip here used to be one of the most annoying doors to try and skip through, but thanks to God lunging, it's pretty easy.
されてやりにくいところですが、
Now,
スムーズでしたね。
we're coming up on the second to last area of the game and haven't upgraded armor at all. So Harumaki is going to equip these items, this item here called the Phantom Boots. It's the second to last tier of boot upgrades. Oh, he never even picked up the black chain. Never mind. Wow, that is gutsy to go for a run without the black chain in a marathon. The second tier of armor that he picked up that na2na picked up before the Hugo fight. Even Harumaki started putting that in marathon runs, so the fact he didn't go for it is actually really impressive because it makes Hugo a lot more manageable. Anyways, so this screen right here that Harumaki is on gives really, really good EXP. Like, you level up like 2.5 times on this one single screen.
通常2段ジャンプでは届かないところなんですが、壁だったり柱だったり、特定の角度に、入力を入れた状態で2段ジャンプするとジャンプの高さがめちゃくちゃ上がる。
So the idea is to get up to 267. Mostly because this area is really, really good for EXP. We want to minimize the amount of time spent grinding in the next area for the boss after. Alternatively, though, they want to be at 267 because there's a boss coming up soon that you can skip. It would be faster if you could perform the skip, but if you fail to perform it, because we skipped through the pink barrier before the boss, we don't really have a backup. So you kind of just have to fight the boss if you fail to skip, and that fight costs about 50 seconds on your run. So Harumaki really wants to make sure he can perform this skip. Alright, let's see if he can do it. Oh, you got it. Very nice. That skip is remarkably tricky to do. There are safer ways to do it, but that particular way that he did it is probably just the one that he's most consistent with. And that just skips a really annoying fight. Like, it's not especially hard, it's just annoying. That is the Pictomos fight. That particular skip was such a, like, problem for so many runners for so long that Harumaki himself, his Discord avatar is just a pixelated version of Pictomos. Oh no, na2na fell. So thankfully on the easy difficulty, you can set the game to what is called no fall mode, which resets the room if you ever fall, rather than falling to a lower screen. So he didn't lose as much time there. So very quick thinking. Most runners don't ever remember to turn that on. So at this point, he's quite a bit behind, but there are still things that can really put a damper on Harumaki's run. So it's not over yet. And part of it also is Harumaki's just an absolute beast. Like, na2na's PB, I think, is a 124.20, which is a really good time. Like, I'm not going to downplay that at all. But Harumaki this year actually got the first sub 120, which was, like, unheard of, like, a few years ago. So Harumaki's on this 3-minute long cutscene. Essentially, after Toal's kind of revealed that, you know, he's willing to side for good. He has a talk with Hugo, and Hugo is just like, he's just immensely frustrated with his brother. to the point where his own weakness, Dallas tempts him with power. And in Hugo's story, essentially, he can't even defeat Pictomos. So that temptation of power gives him, like, if it tempts him enough that he actually kind of resigns himself to it. But the problem is, of course, he loses full self-control. And so he kind of, in Toal's story, just becomes Dallas's puppet.
ボコされた後ですね、シオンさんが来て、回復魔法を
And just completely blasts us after that last boss fight that we skipped, and takes away Rhea and the Black Pearl. So the bad guys have the dark, powerful MacGuffin, and we need to stop them, because we were never with them to begin with. We were never evil.
感じの空気アイテム
なぜ渡した
So Shion here recognizes our face turn. Also, really quick, na2na getting the Pictomo skip as well, which is very good. I personally am like 1 for 15 with that skip in marathon runs. I usually fail it, and for a variety of reasons. So it's very cool to see them both get it. And Shion recognizes that we're a good guy again, and so he gives us the Lila Shell, which is an item that the other characters normally get to, like, if you forget what to do next, it's usually like some pointers on what to do next. You don't need it if you're playing Toal, because if you're playing Toal, you've already beaten the game and you basically know how to navigate the tower. It's more just like a story sign of like, hey, we think you're a good guy now. So I think it's a neat little moment. So a lot of this section is just movement. Harumaki is positioned in such a way that after 2 mobs of enemies here, he should be able to get to 278. Or actually, no, he wants to get to 273 because he has the Claria ring and is able to do enough damage to outdamage the next boss. Still not used to Claria ring strats. This was a relatively new addition within the last few months. And he remembers to equip the Brave Armor. If you forget to equip the Brave Armor, this next boss is just a royal pain in the neck. There is a very tricky clip that you can do there. I guess he decides he wants to grind to 278.
そうですね。以前の、
But there's a very tricky clip you can do there.
奏者の方が
Oh, he's only getting half a level then. For EXP reasons, I guess.
辛そうな思い
But this next fight is Kishko. It's a giant pain in the butt. This is probably the hardest fight to perform in the entire run, because Kishko hits like a truck. So Kishko is one of Dallas's minions, basically. Most of the quote-unquote minions really are just, we have a mutually agreed upon like circumstance, like we have the same goal, but we're not really like allies. Kishko just wants to fight strong people. That's kind of just been what's fueled him the entire time. He actually was the one who killed Toal's mentor, Saltova,
けましたかね
in a sort of a big old battle with demons, and that kind of led Toal down the path that he's in. And he's seeking a fight with Toal because he didn't really get the chance to fight against Saltova at full strength. So yeah. Harumaki just absolutely wiping the floor with him. Incredibly clean fight. Was actually able to avoid Kishgal's super attack, which you can with really good spacing of your fire tornadoes. So very clean fight on his part.
というか、その
Now this cutscene here is kind of meant as like a
関してはモードがついていて、そちらは
kind of like just a showing of how far Toal has come. Kishgal insists that, you know, we fight to the death, but Toal just says, no, I'm already stronger than you. I don't need to prove myself to beat you, and I don't need to kill you, because that's not my goal right now. And Kishgal takes offense to that. It's like, you refuse to finish me, then I'll kill you. But in comes Unico to save the day,
ムービーはロット
and basically hold him at bay.
ユニカさんが助けに来てくれます。なん
Both, I think all of the like Darkling characters, because that's the name of their tribe. Epona, Kishko, and then also Zava, the sorceress, and Dallas, the sorcerer. I don't believe they're Darklings, but they're big and evil. They each have like a power up that they can get. I think Dallas can unlock it, but the Black Pearl enhances that power to an extreme, which is why they want it. I don't entirely remember the lore. I've been speedrunning this game for 5 years, and the last time I read the cutscenes was like 2017. Anyway, Harumaki doing a particularly weird little clip you can do on that corner there to get out of bounds. The geometry around that staircase is very, very odd, but remarkably, tricky, but also interesting to skip through. Here's another more consistent little corner clip that you can do to God Lunge, or even just God Speed at a particular angle through that corner there to get to this lower platform. This is the Hall of Mirrors. It has, in my opinion, one of the most underrated tracks Yuzo Koshiro ever composed. And you want to go through it in such a way that you can pick up this last Claria ore. I haven't really touched on the Claria ore. Those give you a strength bonus, and that strength bonus is absolutely 100% necessary because, like, it means the difference between doing like 1 damage and doing like 8 to a boss in some cases. But the mirrors sort of work as a teleporter puzzle. So na2na coming up on the Kishko fight here, and Harumaki coming up on the Zava fight. Zava is a sorceress. She summons these 2 giant heads, which make for one of the most annoying bosses in the original East 1. Thankfully, this fight is pretty free. I say pretty. If things go really badly, like a lot of time loss can happen here. In fact, na2na on his most recent PB, before his current one, actually died on this fight, which I didn't even know you could. So, na2na's getting a pretty clean fight. He wants to avoid Kishko's finisher here. So Kishko got off his like special attack, which really sucks because the attack lowers his lowers the damage that he takes for a few seconds, so it's quite time consuming. So, but otherwise, he was able to successfully do the fight on his first try at a lower level than many of us go for this fight on, so very good for him. Over on Harumaki's screen, Zava likes to get herself stuck in these heads here, and you need to repeatedly hit whichever one she goes into, and then back and forth between the two. This is guaranteed to happen at least once, and then the rest of the fight, you knock her out, and then you just repeatedly wail on her over and over again, and anytime she gets up and starts to float in the air, you want to hit her, which Harumaki was able to successfully prevent her from basically getting any more attacks off by doing that. He kept her out of the air before she could put up a barrier, do her attacks, float off, and be really frustrating because of the weird camera angle that you fight her at. And prevented her from going back in the heads, which is very slow. So now she's using the power up to just generate a metric ton of magic and keep summoning enemies until Toal dies is the idea. But of course, the good guys are here to save the day. This time it's Galion, who is, I think, the current, like, he's in Saltova's position as sort of like the leader of the, sort of like army that that the region of East fights with. He's actually the first boss that we actually skipped much earlier in the run. Harumaki jumped over the trigger for the boss, and na2na just avoided that room entirely. Anyway, so this area has the best music in the game. I don't know how well it comes through on the restream because I'm probably like significantly louder than the game audio that's coming through. But yeah, listen to the track Beyond the Beginning from East Origin. It is fantastic. It's so hype when you get to this part because it's like we're at the very definitively final part of the tower here. This whole game actually just takes place in one giant tower, which you would think would make it boring, but remarkably, like, the locales are varied enough here that that even though you are in one dungeon the entire game, things work out pretty well. This room is really odd that Harumaki is on. The door up here has very busted geometry, so you can actually get kind of out of bounds here, and then he's just going to repeatedly god lunge because of an angular geometry on the door that lets him basically just like slide vertically without even jumping, and then just get behind the door. So this is Hugo 2. Once again, you can actually use the invulnerability setup here to get into this fight with invulnerability. Sadly, you're not able to do that in the first Hugo fight. We don't know why that is, but unfortunately you can't be invulnerable in that fight. But you can in this one, and this one is a less annoying fight, but still a very annoying fight. So a charged Inferno is just the most efficient means to damage Hugo while while his barrier is down. And he just takes no damage whatsoever. It's kind of a miracle, actually, that our attacks have like a hurt box, but we don't have like a proper hit box. So, you can also do it on the Zava fight. You can actually see that na2na has invulnerability on that fight. It's actually not particularly useful, especially because as she as she floats back into the heads, Zava can in the Zava fight you can actually regain hit detection even when you haven't used Godspeed, which normally resets it. But like, this fight's generally easy enough that, you know, not having invulnerability isn't really a problem. So na2na had a bit of a rough stretch there. Zava got off one extra attack, but she didn't go back into the heads, which means that he didn't lose that much time there. Very clearly stretching his wrist there because of the amount of mashing that goes on in these scenes. You don't really need to mash this hard. It's just like if you're trying to be optimal, it saves time. But yeah. So Harumaki's coming up on the final boss, and na2na's coming up on the final section of movement of the run. So very much kudos to both of these runners. Like, the race might seem like it's, you know, there's quite a gap between the two, but like Harumaki is just an absolute beast at this game. na2na is having a very solid run, like minus a like couple of just smaller mistakes. He's just been having a very good run. Just Harumaki is just like, his consistency is so high, and he just did not make hardly any mistakes this run. So Harumaki is on like a gosh, I think this cutscene's like 2.5 minutes or something. There's a cutscene after that's like 5. The end game portion of this run is actually remarkably easy. Even if you're playing this game casually on Nightmare, the final bosses of this game are really easy. Dang. na2na did actually recently find a strat on the previous room, where he was able to get some actually insane acceleration off of the goop that the enemies spit on the floor here.
トール君が魔人化
Yeah,
して、
so you can just get some really, really fast speed on those
た
rooms.
か
One of a few new strats we found for this game at all. In like the last couple of years.
いい数
So
は
na2na is coming up on the door here.
ワンはダルクファクトです。
Gets a successful clip and
2の
ここまでです。
手前で
道
す。
中か前に出ますね
yep, it looks like he got the invulnerability as well. You can tell based on what Toal's position is when he enters the fight.
さて、
If he goes a little bit too far, he knows that he hasn't got it. A lot of these tricks would be run endings, so the fact that both of these runners got all of the potentially run ending tricks without having to load up any backup saves or having to, deal with
ダレス第一
terrible things happening for messing up,
現在は、属性に対応した
they were able to avoid both problematic parts of this run. Like, there are things that can just straight up kill your run in this game, and normally in a race you would go for safe strats, but neither of them really opted for like safety saves or anything, so very impressive.
してしまうので、結構
On the Dallas fight here, the first phase is free. The second phase is pretty easy. The way it works is he summons this shield. You need to hit him with a particular elemental magic. And then the third phase, these little satellite things that have been following around him are going to go around the arena and cause trouble. Wants to take those out so he can break the barrier in front of Dallas's hitbox.
砲台がバリアを守っている状態になりますでその2つを破壊する
And then be able to damage him. Ideally, you get 3 cycles on all of these phases. It is possible to get 4. I don't know what triggers it. But he really wants to avoid that, like, purple summoning circle that Dallas is summoning.
エンドフェーズ
If you get stuck in that, you have to sit through like a 15-second long attack animation. So Harumaki had a very good Dallas fight there. This fight's not especially difficult. The only major difference on like higher difficulties, for example, is that it's really hard to not get one shot by his laser attacks. So they do usually on hard and nightmare pick up the burst attack, which we'll see Toal perform in one of these cutscenes. And the burst attack is just kind of like a Gallic gun style laser beam that you shoot, but it gives you invulnerability. So
それ確かにでかいですね。
it's really the only major difference in terms of combat strats between like lower difficulties and higher difficulties.
ダレスの体を貫きます
誰でしょうか。
So I actually haven't touched on the version differences of this game. So last time this game was in RTA in Japan, it was actually done on PS4. The PS4 does have cutscene fast forwarding, which is a real godsend for that version. But it doesn't have mouse and keyboard controls, which makes certain skips just much more difficult. And so we category split those years ago. If you've ever seen Final Fantasy 7, 8, or 9 speedruns, it's kind of similar to how
印象を植え付けたのはこのカインの指示
those games have PC ports, which are faster, but not quite as good of a run, I would say. It's not as consistent. It's a much more buggy version of the game at times. The Switch version is especially bad about this. Unica is actually fastest on the Switch, but the port's not particularly good, so it's much less consistent. It's also at like 30 frames per second, so a trick that's like 2 frames on PC or PS4 is only 1 frame on Switch.
さんがあっけなくやられてますね。
はい
で、この赤くて黒くてうねうねしたやつが魔の根源ですね。
Since like a frame perfect trick in 30 frames per second is like 1/30th of a second, which is very tight, and there are several 1 to 2 frame tricks in Unica's story.
なるので攻撃は通らないと。さあどうしようという時に
So essentially what's happening on the
リーナ様が
story angle,
置いてますね。まだ
We defeated Dallas with the power, as he used the power of the Black Pearl to soup himself up.
というかはこのようにフィールド
But
の展開
in from the sky came this mysterious old blonde-haired man. His name is Kane Fact, and he is Toal and Hugo's father. He's mentioned a few times throughout the story, particularly in Hugo's story, as being kind of like one of the most powerful mages around.
で、
And there's hints to this. It's not like completely thrown out of nowhere, but it is definitely like a surprise to see him here. And he basically reveals he's been manipulating the events behind the scenes of the game. And so he finishes Dallas off and impales him with extreme prejudice, and then takes the magic power that he got from the Black Pearl for himself.
第2形態
携帯の変わり際に叩きすぎる
Yeah, the Fact family in East Lore is generally screwed up.
なるほど。
So the cutscene that Harumaki's on is like 5 minutes long. He gives the he gets the silver sword from the goddess. Thena managed to get broken free by the good guys, and was able to repair Toal's sword, which is the silver sword. Which in East 1 you need the silver sword to defeat Dark Fact, who's the final boss of that game. You cannot damage him with any other weapons,
BGM は確かオーバードライブ
even though there is actually a stronger sword.
のアレンジ的な
So that's kind of a reference to that. It was originally Toal's sword in the lore, but with the sword, even though Toal does have his claw attack, he also has a sword which lets him shoot these little rays of light. So for this particular fight here, we have a ranged attack for once.
まあまあまあってとこですね
さあ、春巻さんが、ラスボスのカインダ
And na2na just finishing up on the Dallas fight. Pretty clean on his end as
今回
well.
は真ん中に、黒真珠が埋まっているので引っ張り出して攻撃します
So the Darm Fact fight here, this fight's really annoying. It's not particularly difficult by any stretch. Like, even on Nightmare, it's pretty easy.
第2形態っていう
But
かね
あ、はい。
こいつはもう完全におみくじですね
the way this guy works is he,
3分の1を引かない
his weak spot is the Black Pearl. We need to basically hit the Black Pearl.
そうですね
And
形態以降は、
it'll randomly appear in one of his arms or
あるので3分の1
in the center.
になります
And so there is some element of randomness, so you can lose time to just
攻撃が
bad
取れなくなっ
luck.
て黒真珠をまた体内に取り込むときに、
I think this game's on sale on Steam for like $6. So if you haven't played this game, I definitely do recommend it. There are a couple of old game design aspects to it that I'm not the biggest fan of, but overall, I really, really like this game.
うんうん
来ましたね
So Harumaki getting a little bit unlucky there, getting the Dark Pearl spawn in the Black Pearl spawn in the one spot that he wasn't attacking. This fight's cycle based, so you can only do so much damage to it at any given point.
なぜかそこそこ高い気がしますね
So there's 4 cycles, and then finally the boss's final phase, where he's gonna kind of go into desperation mode and just throw everything but the kitchen sink at you.
回でしたね引いたの
1回ですねこれで第2形態突破ですね
I think Harumaki's on pace for a 120x run. Like,
春巻さん
yeah, this is gonna be a 120. That is actually really crazy.
タイマーストップですね
For perspective, world record is like
ストップですね
119 50, I think.
1時間20分22秒お疲れ様でした
Yeah, that's 120.22. So world record is 119.50. He was 30 seconds off PB in a marathon run.
結構早いですね
That is some really, really good quality stuff there. He made very few like mistakes.
30秒ぐらいですね
早い。セーフティーセーブ書いて、
Like, for perspective, second place is
そうですね
124.25. So Harumaki just balling out there.
いやお見事でした
So Nazuna's made a couple mistakes. I don't think he's on PB pace. I based on just how far behind he was, I think he's on pace for a it's like a 125 or a 126, which are still really, really good runs. Like, don't let the time on the right tell you that the time on the left isn't impressive. It genuinely is.
ちなみに春巻さんの記録1時間19分50秒で唯一、そして念願の80分切りをね、つい2週間ほど前に達成されまして、かなり過酷な過酷なリセットを、見てまいりました。はい。
そうですね、だいぶちょっとつまずいたりしてましたけど。
はい。
メンタル弱いのもあって、どれだけいいペースでいっても毎回後半でつまずいて20分0秒台を
Also, the music played in this scene is really great. It's probably the best rendition of the game's opening AMV theme or FMV. I'm so used to just calling it an AMV because this game is anime as hell.
なずなさんも、先日ね、自己ベスト更新されまして、1時間24分25秒でしたかね、を出されております。
49、どっちだっけ？
SRC 上25になってますね。
25、あ、じゃあそっち。はい。保存し忘れ。
Actually, I think na2na is on pace for a if he does his fight perfectly, I think he can still get a 124, like 50 something, which would be like seconds off PB. Oh, that's unfortunate. He took a lot of damage there. It's about the only way you can die in this fight is if you get like hit by one particular attack. So, instead of what Harumaki did, you saw Harumaki would actually fall in the like space around it and take the damage there. The reason we do that is because when you go into boost, the boost meter sorry, not when you go into it. When you're not in boost, the boost meter regenerates based on your current health. It's very slow if you're at full health, but it regenerates extremely quickly if you're at very low health. So the lower your health, the quicker it regenerates. And you really want to enter this boss's final phase in boost, because it's just a much more efficient way to do damage in that fight. So this particular attack can be quite annoying. Just because it's like, if you get hit, you kind of get repeatedly staggered over and over again. It just throws off your momentum. One of the things that makes this game quite tricky, actually, is you have very few frames of... you have very few invincibility frames when you get hit by something. So, yeah, na2na is just on the final phase here. And he gets a 125.03. That's... So, na2na was less than 15 seconds off from his PB, and Harumaki was only about 32 off of his PB. So both of these runners performing extremely well. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Like, as I mentioned, this game being done on the easy difficulty, this run is not easy. Like, there are plenty of points where things can just go south just really quickly. And plenty of stuff where it's like, if you make one mistake, like, it is incredibly punishing. So any of the mistakes that they made were relatively minor. So yeah, just kudos to both these runners. Do give them a follow. They both stream on Twitch fairly regularly. Don't speak a lot of English, but I mean, they're both just really good. And they're both just very cool parts of the East community. They're in our English-speaking server, which We have a Japanese channel for, thankfully,
じゃあ、それでは、
for stuff like that.
まあ、
But they've both been a very valued part of the community for the last couple of years. So
どちらから行きましょうか。
really cool to see them get a chance to race this for RTA in Japan.
一言よろしくお願いし
Both
ま
of
す
them are kind of RTA in Japan veterans at this point.
そうですね、まあ、今回
So
結構途中で詰まってしまったり、まあ、
yeah, I hope you enjoyed. It's kind of neat seeing an English speaking version, or sorry, an English text version of this game being done. Just like I mentioned, it is a little slower than the Japanese version, but for this category, it's
原因は結構
fairly stable relative to the Japanese version, which can crash a lot more often. This version almost never crashes.
英語版だと使わ
Um,
れてしまう作品ではあるんですけど、まあ、日本語版で走るんであれば、
okay, I don't think they updated the runner command.
認められてるので、
Check the
興味がある
schedule.
方はなんかぜひ
Um,
なんかやっていただけたらなと思います。
don't remember na2na. So Harumaki's stream, it's just shown on the screen here. It's Harumaki44, twitch.tv/Harumaki44.
完走した感想なんですが、
And then na2na, na2na is the same as shown on screen as well. Twitch.tv/na2na underscore RTA.
残念だったなっていうのがあったので、
Both of them stream this game fairly regularly, although I don't know how much that's going to continue because Harumaki broke a big minute barrier, and
価格の領域の
na2na,
態度がうまいこと言ってたのが
he'd been practicing a lot for this marathon, but
映像になったんじゃないかと思って、
both of them run multiple East games. Harumaki does Ark of Nepishtim and Oath of Felghana, and na2na also runs East Memories of Silseta.
総打件数が23240回で、Z キーが、まあ、当然ダントツの1位で2275回になっています。
2275回。
でスキルキーが1200回、まあ、ジャンプも同じぐらいになってます。まあ、打件数はそんな感じになってます。はい、そうですね。まあでも全体的にタイムも非常に良かったので安心してます。ありがとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。では、どすらさん、いかがでしょうか。
はい。
Anyways, so that will pretty much do it for us. For me, I guess, for now. I will be back actually later tonight. I'm going to be helping out with Restream commentary for Super Paper Mario, which is 3 runs from now. So you'll hear more of me there. As for what is next on the schedule, that'll be Brave Fencer Musashi. Can't remember the runner's name. Should be on the schedule.
まあ、スピードランやったことはない通常プレイのみという状態で。
Yeah, Brave Fencer Musashi will be run by Gamma. And believe for your Restream commentary, you will be having Piano Man 7117 and Zachary Lawrence, both of whom I've watched do marathon runs of Brave Fencer Musashi before, so you're in for a treat. And yeah, definitely if you are interested in the East community as well, we do have a speedrunning Discord. You go to speedrun.com/EastO for East Origin. So YSO, speedrun.com/YSO. We have a link to our resources there. But any of the games you can find on speedrun.com, like East 1 and 2, we have quite a bunch of runners for those. East, Oath, and Felghana, Ark of Nepishtim, Memories of Silseta, 7, 8, and 9 all have their own leaderboards and communities. So we're very welcoming. We like to help new people get into these games.
じゃあ最後、宣伝の方なんですが、
And I do kind of want to shout out all the people who've worked on these games. Shout outs to Harumaki. He's come up with a lot of strats for this game and shared those with us. na2na's actually come up with a couple strats himself, so shout outs to both of them. They've both been doing work with this game. Shout outs to Spooty Biscuit, one of the older runners of this game. Shoutouts to Extreme Board, who was kind of an OG legend of this game. Did a ton with the early strats and recently rejoined the server, which was really nice to see. Because we hadn't we hadn't kept in touch with him since before Discord was a thing. Shoutouts to Talianis, Finnish speedrunner, who currently I think occupies third place in this category. He's come up with a lot of strats, including god lunging, which was a real game changer. Shoutouts to Gaia Chaos. He's not a runner of the game per se, but he does. He did have a YouTube channel with a lot of boss time attack, which ended up being useful for formulating some of the strats that are used in the runs. And yeah, shoutouts to Fel Visage. He came up with a number of strats, including the Hugo quick kill, which is extremely useful. Shoutouts to Tsukiwaka, one of the old admins of the East server. I think he did more work on the Unica run, but some of the strats just end up being useful for all the characters. And I don't know if he had any work on it, but shoutouts to Jado. Shoutouts to Jado for breaking every video game he touches. I think this game was already broken before he had the chance to break it. But yeah, Jado's broken a lot of East games, and I want to shout him out every time I do an I commentate for an East Marathon run. So if you've seen any of the brilliant diamond shining pearl stuff, Jado's had his hand in breaking that for just some idea of the kinds of stuff that he does to video games. I do want to also shout outs to D Skipla, I think I don't know how exactly he pronounces his name. Dosfura, I think is how his Twitch channel goes. And Xcheek, both of whom provided commentary for the Japanese end of things. They're both valued members of the East community. So definitely want to give them a big shout out. And yeah, that'll do it for me for now. I'll be back later tonight for Super Paper Mario. And I believe I'm also commentating one other run in this marathon, which would be Sonic 2, which will be tomorrow. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. Definitely check out the next couple runs, because we have kind of a long RPG back to back block here between Final Fantasy all the way through, I guess, Super Paper Mario. So hope you all enjoy.